Hi guys, it's Cindy Lynn with my Inkie Fingers coming to you from Calgary, Alberta. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do want to point out really quick that this is the very first time I'm doing a voiceover, so it's all new to me, so bear with me. But let's get into what I used to make this card today. I've got the Parisian Beauty set out of our current mini catalog, and I paired that with the Parisian dies. Now, the two of those together during celebration have already basically earned you a freebie out of the celebration catalog, which is really, really cool. I also used the flourishing phrases to stamp the thank you so very much on the inside of my card. Now, what I was going for here was a vintage feel, kind of vintage distressy kind of feel. And you're going to notice that I changed things up quite a bit during the process, which I'm sure you do too while you're at home. Everything doesn't just come to me immediately, so I did switch things up quite a bit, and you're going to get to see that. Now, I did pull out my color wheel and all of my paper color swatches. Thank you to my upline Doris for giving those to me. But the color wheel, what that allows me to do is I pointed one of the arrows at red, and the opposite arrow points directly at the green. So I know that green directly complements red. So I just kind of played around there to figure out what colors I want to use. And I decided on the Old Olive, the Cherry Cobbler, and the Soft Suede. Now, I did pull out my hardboard and I did tape my watercolor paper down to it because when you're using a lot of water, your paper will ripple and it'll get all bent and out of shape, and then it won't dry flat and whatnot. So I always tape it to a board. And I've got out my paper towels and my extra piece of watercolor paper. So what I started doing was I started by spraying my paper, and then I used my paintbrush to kind of wash it around. And then I thought, no, I didn't want the streaky lines. I wanted the spray, right? So I went and sprayed it again. Now, I am going to come in with my Old Olive first, and you'll notice that I sprayed my watercolor paper on the side, my sample piece, so that I could see what it was going to do. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do. So I oftentimes use that scratch piece before I actually go onto my actual paper that I want to be my finished product. I also like to use the aqua painter, put a little bit of water in the lid there. So as you can see, again, I'm going to use the scratch paper first, and then I'm going to go directly onto the paper that's going to be my finished product. And I'm just going to keep dipping back into the ink little bits at a time until I get the desired color I'm looking for. And then your aqua painter cleans off so easy. I mean, all you got to do is just wipe it on that paper towel. And then I'm going to go into the brown, and I'm just going to squish the aqua painter so that the water comes out with the ink, because it kind of dilutes it a little bit there for you, right? So I'm going to do that a couple times just to get the effect that I'm going for. And remember, when you're doing this, guys, less is more. So it's always better to go in with a little bit than too much, because it's kind of hard to get that off afterward, right? If you do go in with too much, grab your paper towel really quick and just tap it right on top of your project, and it should lift off most of the color, but it won't lift off all of it, right? So I'm going to use the paper towel there just to kind of sop up the edges. Normally, you're going to cut the edges off anyhow, so you don't worry too much about it. But if you get too much water there, your tape will start to peel. So I like to try to get that off. Now I'm going to speed up my drying process here, and I'm drying because if your paper is dry, the next layer will be more vibrant in colors and it won't spread quite as much. So I'm just going to add some droplets and then spray it and move it around a little bit more. And the nice thing about the board is you can pick it up and you can kind of tilt the board side to side and whatnot, and help the water pool where you want it to go, which I really like. So I'm going to come in with some more deeper color now. I'm not going to use the diluted parts of the ink, and just add some more colors here and there. And if you notice that you've got two colors that are making kind of like a pool of muddy gray, just use your paper towel and sop that up, and you should be able to dry it and then go back over top. I didn't really have too much that issue this time, so I really wasn't too worried about it. So now I'm going to put some water in my fingers, and then I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it over top. Because the nice thing about the Stampin' Up ink, just like watercolor, the water will help dilute the color there and help remove it. So I've got some big dots. I'm going to go in and make some little dots and then take that off with my paper towel. And I'm really liking how that looks. So now I'm just going to kind of place where I want to cut my die out. Cut the stamp out, and then use the stitched rectangle dies and just kind of play with it back and forth until I get it where I want it. So I've decided where I want my Eiffel Tower to go. So I'm going to ink that up with the Memento ink. Now here's a tip. You're going to want to ink that up probably 2 or 3 times because the watercolor paper is so textured, you're not going to get a super crisp impression the very first time. So it looks like I went in 3 times here. And then I cut the actual Eiffel Tower die out of there. And then I used the stitched rectangle die and I cut out a rectangle there. Now it looks a little wonky right now, but you'll understand why I did that here in a few minutes, because I'm going to take a piece of the soft suede and I'm going to use 2 of the rectangle dies and I'm going to make a frame. And it picked up my magnetic board, picked up some of those papers. And when I ran it through my Big Shot, those papers fell behind the desk I have my Big Shot on. It was an absolute mess trying to get those out of there. But nevertheless, so I'm going to keep the negative space that I've moved over to the right-hand side there, because I'm going to want to put that in the back, because when I use the dimensionals and I raise up that Eiffel Tower, I don't want this green, or I said green because I'm going to use the green, but I don't want the white or the green to show through, right? So I'm going to save that negative space. Now I'm just going to kind of glue those in there just to make it easier to work with while I move everything around. And it probably looks like I'm using an awful lot of that Tombow liquid adhesive. I'm really not, but because it's watercolor paper and it is textured, I wanted to kind of squish it down, and then I used the tip to just kind of move the glue all around. And then I used my black Stampin' Right marker to just finish off the edges around the Eiffel Tower where I cut it out. I didn't want it to look white. So I'm just playing around here trying to figure out the size for my dimensionals to go around the sides. And I'm going to use the soft suede marker to color the edges of that foam, because I guess I'm just picky. I don't want to see the white, and I don't want the recipient to see the white of the foam. So here I had decided I wanted to make a background, and I really like the retired French script background. And I saw this stamp and thought, I can make a background out of this. So I grabbed my cute little pencil that I just got in Cuba this month, and I traced the actual frame so that I know where I need to place that. So I flipped the paper over, as you can see. I don't know really why I did that. I could continue, but nevertheless. Now, if you notice, I didn't get a good impression up there on the right, near just below the corner, which is going to be the pain in my you-know-what for the entire rest of the time I make this card, because I wanted to move things around and place things in different places, but I wanted to cover that because every mistake is another reason to layer, right? And I didn't want to risk re-stamping that there because I knew I wasn't going to get it perfect. So you're going to see that I go, it just drives me crazy for the whole video. Nevertheless, so I used a Versamark marker because I decided I wanted my frame to be gold. If you don't have a marker, that's totally fine, because I know we don't carry those anymore. I'm going to show you a quick tip here in a second on what you can do if you don't have the marker. So I'm just going to go in with my gold embossing powder, and I'm going to heat that up. And I hope that the video is not going too fast. I feel like I may have edited it a little bit too much because I feel like I'm talking way too fast. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't have enough time to say what I want to say. So nevertheless, thank you for bearing with me if you're still watching. And don't forget to give me a like, because it makes me feel good. And I know that you're having fun and enjoying what I'm putting out there. So again, if you don't have the actual Versamark marker, you can take your Versamark ink pad and your bone folder and just depress whatever it is you're trying to emboss onto the actual pad. And then you can get your embossing going from there. Now, I accidentally depressed it on the same side I had already done, but that's not a big deal. It didn't really affect the final outcome of my frame. So once I've got that all done there and it's cooled off, I'm just going to kind of piece it around a little bit again just to see what's what and where's where. And I wanted to actually do this really cool technique here with these two stamps. The little, what is that? The stamp that they use to cancel off your actual stamps on your envelope. And then the seal, those seals always remind me of, remember back in the day when they would put, back in the day, none of us really remember that, but way, 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 way long time ago, they would put the candle wax down or whatever wax it was and put the signature emblem, whatever in there. So I wanted to create that. So I'm going to use my Versamark marker and I'm just going to color it on the actual paper there. And I'm going to layer 4 layers of embossing powder. So you have to work really, really quick here. So while it's warm, you just add another layer of embossing powder and then you heat emboss it and then go in really, really quick again and add another layer. And I was really liking that when the paper gets hot, the little bits of embossing powder stick around the edges too, not only where you put your Versamark. So I wanted to kind of utilize that with this, but it didn't work out. So here what I'm going to do is when it's the 4th layer is on and it's hot, make sure that your stamp has lots of Versamark on it. Depress it into there, and you can see that kind of gives you that look of it's been reverse embossed, and I just love that look. So again, there was an idea I had with this. And then I started cutting it out all weird because I wanted to preserve all of the little spray of embossing powder that was all around there. I thought it looked so cool, but it was just, this is not looking cool at all. I was not liking the way that this was looking in any way, shape, or form. So I thought, well, maybe I'll use a distress tool and just kind of distress it a little bit. It might kind of give it some more character. So that's my Tim Holtz distress tool. And it was okay, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, no, I don't like this. So I cut off all the distressing. And I'm trying to kind of now navigate how I'm going to use that to cover up that little space on the right-hand side where the ink impression didn't really stamp really good. But I'm just not, and you might love that. I mean, if you like that, then there's a super cool idea for you, right? I'm talking with my hands. I probably just made a horrible sound on my mic. But anyhow, if you like that, then you do you and go for it. But for me, it wasn't what I had in mind, so it threw me right off. So I die cut out the Merci from the Parisian dies, and I thought, let's go with this. So I wanted to emboss it in gold. So that little dot for the eye, I mean, how many times have we lost those? So I thought, okay, I kept thinking, I got to make sure that I don't lose this with the heat gun and blow it all over the place. So I ended up moving it off my workspace, but I did the depression embossing into the ink pad with the bone folder, like I told you about a few minutes earlier. And as I was heat embossing it, it flipped over onto my paper and kind of made it look messy. So I did a second coat on there. So I figured I would use the Merci to hide that, and then that wasn't working. So I'm playing around with all these little elements and pieces that I cut out, thinking, how am I going to put this down here? And it just, nothing was working for me. I wasn't happy with this at all. So I finally decided to use the Merci, put it down in the bottom right hand side of the card, and then actually stamp the postage cancellation waveform thingies over top of that little mistake. And that satisfied me because then I could use the reverse embossing Eiffel Tower stamp circle thing to kind of offset it to the left of there. So that made me a lot happier. So I'm just going to heat emboss that now. And if you didn't know, if your heat embossing tool is very hot, things emboss a whole lot quicker. So if you're embossing on like vellum or acetate or something like that, turn your embossing gun on for, a good amount of time until you think it's nice and hot, and then emboss those things that tend to warp and ripple quite a bit when you're embossing them. So just a kind of a cool tip that I picked up over the years. You may have noticed too that I have a blue refill in my Stampin' Up snail adhesive, but don't tell anybody. I had some refills that I got off Amazon I had to use up, and I usually use them up when I'm just crafting by myself, and I forgot to change it out, so don't tell anybody. Anyhow, so I'm going to now put down the background that I watercolored for the Eiffel Tower and peel off my backing for the foam strips and then put the frame on. And then we're going to put that Eiffel Tower on there and piece everything together. And I'm really, really loving the way the card is turning out thus far. You probably noticed in the picture that the old olive background is distressed, so I am going to peel that off because nothing ever goes right for me the first time I do it. I mean, you would not believe how long this video was before I edited it, right? But I mean, does everything go right for you the first time? Probably not, right? Or maybe it does, and you're just one of those fortunate people that can just sit down and in 30 minutes whip together something fantastic. But for me, I have to change things around a million times over. So there I've got my stamp in the actual background, which I absolutely love that there. And I did put the adhesive or the dimensional strips on the back of the little reverse embossed image there. And I did color the sides of those as well with the soft suede. So it looks like a party hat in the video. I couldn't help but think that over and over when I was watching this, editing it. And it really doesn't look like that in person. Like, it just looks like that on the video, but it really doesn't look like that in person. So the Merci, I'm going to use the fine tip glue. They call it a pen, but I like calling it a bottle. Either or. I'm going to use that to adhere that down and just put my acrylic block over it for a second. And then I changed my mind. I'm going to put the eye, and I cannot believe I didn't lose this eye the whole entire time. I always lose the little dots for the eyes, but I didn't lose it today, so I was really, really happy about that. So nevertheless, here's where I rip off the old olive, which I was so thankful I used the snail adhesive because I normally use the Tombow liquid adhesive, and I always do that in my classes because it really helps my newbies get that positioning perfect, right? So I was really thankful I didn't do that. So in the flourishing phrases, I'm going to pull out the thank you so very much, and I'm going to stamp that in the middle of the card in the middle of the insert for the inside of my card. Now, I have a piece of acetate in my Stamparatus that I printed a graph paper on, and my printer wouldn't, the ink, I guess, is not right, so it didn't want to dry, so then I laminated it. I thought, I am going to win. You will not win. So I use that acetate and I stamp on it when I'm using my cling stamps so that I can get this stamp exactly where I want it, because nothing drives me crazy more than stamping something with a cling stamp that doesn't position properly. So as you can see, I'm going to use that same acetate that I printed the graph paper on, and I'm going to make a border along the bottom of the card with the stamp out of the, that one was out of the Parisian Beauty. So I'm going to just kind of move that around, move my paper out, and then I put my magnet on, and then I've got it completely straight across the bottom. Now, it's kind of off the bottom of the video here, but you'll see it in just a second. And I'm going to use the snail adhesive again to adhere the insert of my card inside. I don't normally do this on my videos, the inserts, but you know what? A lot of other people don't do them, so I figured, why the heck not? I'm going to throw it in there for you guys. So that's my finished card. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video. I learned a whole lot today, editing and doing the voiceover, so it's got to get better from here, right? Anyhow, thank you again for tuning in, and until I see you again, happy stampin'. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and take care for now. Bye.